Welcome to One on One, a special episode of God 101. It's special because look at my guest today. We have MMA fighter and just fierce mother, wife, competitor, and winner of Celebrity Big Brother, Miesha Cupcake Tate. Hi, Misha. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Julie. This is so cool. This is much better than having our little conversations on the show, I must admit.
Oh, my intimidating house guest. Get in the living room right now.
Exactly. I was like, ooh, all right. But here I feel relaxed and this is so much better. I'm really glad to be out of the house and I feel like it was worth it because I won the whole thing, right?
You won
So there we go.
$250,000 for you and your family.
Exactly.
We're going to talk all things Big Brother in a moment, but first, God, because God comes first in my life, which is a new thing for me. And I always start out this show by asking the guest about faith. I always ask, did you grow up with faith in your life? And if yes, what did it look like?
Well, that's a wonderful question. I did grow up with faith in my life. I grew up as a Catholic. So I had my first communion and, I grew up with, religion, I guess is a loose word to say. It's more so for me about a spiritual connection. I did grow up going to church, but I think now I do believe that the church is the people, not so much the building. And we do try to still make it to church, but sometimes with two kids who oftentimes since this COVID thing has been going around have been sick surprisingly a lot for being inside and, cooped up and whatnot. But a lot of times we end up watching it on the computer and we do the best to stay in touch. I do my best always to say my prayers at night. But I think the most important thing for me when I think about how God is in my life is just trying to live my life in the best way that gives back and is appreciative and I guess the most in the footsteps of like an example like Jesus as I could be, although clearly I'm far from that. I think we all are. But I think, right, we all are not perfect, but treating others with kindness to the best of my ability is what I try to do and what I try to teach my children.
It sounds like you on your faith walk, you are well aware. It sounds to me that you know what it's all about. It sounds like you know God and you know his expectations from his children, us.
I definitely have a relationship with God. Absolutely. And I need to push myself to invest as much in God as he has invested in me. I am a believer in God and a believer in Christ. And I'll be the first to admit that sometimes life gets crazy and chaotic and I lose sight and I'm not saying my prayers at night and I haven't gone to church for a couple of months. And it's kind of like, a blessing will come my way. And I realize all of a sudden how fortunate I am to have God in my life looking out for me and guiding me and how blessed I am. And I try to take those moments and really hold on to them and say thank you in that moment because I know I don't give as much to God as I feel like he's given to me. God is the driving force behind everything that I do, whether it is a conscious effort, saying my prayers at night and going to church, or a subconscious effort, just knowing that he's there for me. And if I ever have a hard time, he's there. But I also have to remember to be there and be gracious in the moments that I'm blessed with something like Celebrity Big Brother. I mean, I was called up on 2 weeks. It wasn't a part of the game plan. It wasn't a part of, my life's mission. But here I am with an amazing blessing. And I did my best to navigate through that, through that period in my life.
Before you compete, and I'm not talking about Big Brother necessarily, although I'm not excluding it, before you go in the octagon, before you, we call it the cage, the octagon, the ring, are all those correct terminologies for MMA fighters?
That is correct. All those are correct.
Before you get in the ring, the octagon, or the Big Brother house, well, let's separate the Big Brother house.
Sure.
You pray before you compete as an MMA fighter.
That is actually the only tradition that I have before I fight is to get myself and my coaches together, put our heads together, circle around each other, and we always say a prayer. And the prayer consists of something like, God, will you please keep myself and my opponent safe. It sounds crazy to pray for your opponent's safety, but it is important to me because I'm not trying to go out there and hurt someone to where it would affect their family or their life. I'm going out there with a mission to win and provide for my family, as I've trained very, very hard to do. But I have no ill will towards these opponents, and I want them to walk out of there healthy and able to go back to their lives and their families and not have any long lasting repercussions. So we always pray for that, and pray that that God leads me to success in the fight and a victory.
I'd have to say, it sounds like your prayers are working.
I think I have been blessed beyond reason, to be honest. I sometimes I wonder why it is that God has blessed me with so many things. So, two beautiful children, an amazing fiance, a phenomenal mother. Of course, my life is not perfect, and there's certainly ups and downs, as with anyone else. I don't want to paint an illusion that would make maybe people feel bad about their circumstances or their lives, which I find is easy to do on social media. Everyone is kind of looking at how perfect everyone's life is, and I am so grateful that God has blessed me with many things, but maybe what I'm more grateful for is the challenges that God has given me so that I can appreciate the things that I do have and the adversity that I've had to overcome. With God kind of walking by my side, whether I realize it or not at the moment in time, the strength that being a spiritual person has, and having God with me has been able to provide for me. It's without doubt that without God's presence, I wouldn't be where I'm at.
We showed on Big Brother when you were talking inside the house about growing up with not a lot of money. It was just you and your mom. She was a single mom. And sometimes growing up in Tacoma, Washington, where it gets cold, the heating bill didn't get paid on time. And you remember the water being frozen in the toilet. And your mom, God bless her, scrounged together $20 to buy you your first pair of wrestling shoes. And you made them last all 4 years, as beat up as they were. And you had to fight for everything that you have. Talk to me about what faith looked like to you in those really tough times.
Well, faith really came from my mom. She was the one to set the example and tell me that Jesus was always there. And I remember this poster that my mom had. It was an 8x10, and I would always look at it as a little girl, and it had footprints in the sand. And there was a poem, and I remember the gist of the poem was somebody asking, why, God, your footprints aren't there? Why has it always just been mine? Why have I always been walking alone? And the answer was, I've been carrying you. Those are my footprints. Like, you haven't been walking at all. I've been carrying you. That's why there's not two sets of footprints in the sand.
Right. You're on my back the whole time, child.
I always loved that. I just always loved that as a girl. And it kind of, to this day, I haven't thought about that poster since I probably last looked at it, which has been a very long time. But it always, I think, stuck with me clearly because it's in the back of my mind about how important the relationship with God is and how much he is there for you, even when sometimes what you think you see is not exactly how it is.
Okay, so we've moved locations so that Misha would have a stronger Wi-Fi signal. And now we see her wall of fame and accomplishments. And somewhere up there will be your Big Brother key, I hope, because you won Celebrity Big Brother.
That's true.
It's not easy. You said so yourself.
Oh my gosh.
Harder than getting in the octagon and facing an opponent where you've been training for months to defeat. That being said, let's pick up from where we left off, which is how are you going to try and teach your son and your daughter, both under 4 years old, about faith as they grow up in what looks like a life of, comfort and privilege? That's when people start separating from God, I find.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Julie. And I've thought about this a lot because I don't want my daughter to lack perspective. I am so grateful for my upbringing. I wouldn't have changed it for anything. As you kind of mentioned, in my earlier years, my mom was a single mother and we definitely struggled. It was cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm so glad I have that perspective because I do kind of know what it's like to go through hungry years and to work hard and to make your dreams come true. And my mom said a great example of that. And then she met my dad who raised me from about 3 on. But it still is tough, to make ends meet a lot of times, hardworking blue collar family trying to get out of debt. And I'm so glad that I have that. However, it looks like at this point, my daughter will not have that same experience. My accomplishments I've been so fortunate, as I mentioned, to have those pay off, and winning a UFC World Championship, winning Celebrity Big Brother. These things are great. But when you ask the question to get to answer, my daughter and I already have a lot of conversations about God. And if you ask her where God lives, she'll tell you God lives in my heart.
Oh, wow. Good job,
So,
Mom.
thank you. So I try to tell her that God lives in her heart. And I was trying to explain to her just yesterday what spirit is, what your soul is. And it's difficult at this age to explain something like that, but I did the best that I could. And I think to your main question is, if you have children who are growing up in a more privileged home, they're not having to go through adversity themselves, I think it's really important to take them and show them, implement some type of volunteer work. I plan to send my children to do missionary work. I want them to go to places that are third world countries. I want them to see firsthand, as I have seen. I've been through parts of Mexico. I've been in Thailand. I've been in Vietnam. I've been in many, many places where it made me that much more thankful for my situation and how grateful and blessed I am to be where I'm at and have the opportunity where I'm at. I mean, even talking about women in other countries, when I lived in Singapore for about a year and a half, and there were many instances where I was confronted with suppression of women's rights, not so much in Singapore, but more so the people who had come from places where women would not be allowed to do the things that they were allowed to do in Singapore or other first world minded countries. And especially being in a sport like martial arts, when I did start, there was obviously not a lot of support for women doing this, but I still find that to be a huge hurdle for women overseas. When I've been to Thailand, and your heart just breaks because you see these children who are running the streets trying to sell necklaces, and they've got to sell them all before they can go home. And that's the way that they feed their families. And you see children fighting in Muay Thai. I know so many stories of children fighting and being the breadwinners of their family through their physical sacrifice. Then they walk around and try to collect money on their little necklaces as good luck going into the fight. But that money that they collect is really feeding their entire family. And just that responsibility as a child, that they don't really get to enjoy childhood the way that my children do. I want my children to know that there are children out there who have it a lot tougher. And I hope that by giving them perspective, because I do have the money to send them to these places and encourage them to work and see the world in that light, so that hopefully that they can set the world on fire and make changes that we need in this world.
Wow. My walk with Christ is relatively new. It started a little bit before the pandemic, but it got deep during the pandemic. I think that was a time for most of us to kind of like have some self-reflection. We weren't exactly that busy,
Right.
We do want to talk about your time in the Big Brother house. Did you pray when you were in there?
Many times. I found that as a time for me to try to get closer to God, because I needed to draw on his strength in that time. It was very difficult for me in there. I internalize a lot, and I require a lot from myself, and I'm someone who always says yes to everything, and I find myself overloaded a lot of the times. And those are the times when I feel like I've got to lean on my spirituality, because if I don't, sometimes that's the glue to really hold me together.
You have been back home for less than a week at this moment in time as we are recording this interview. How has the onboarding process back to your world been so far? How are you feeling in this moment right now?
I'm feeling a sigh of relief. I finally feel like I've been able to come down off of whatever experience that was, and I'm starting to absorb back into reality. I can't remember, I mentioned that before we were on the show, I think the other day, about just I saw balloons, my congratulation balloons that my friends had brought for me, moving out of the corner of my eye, and I felt like it was the camera for a second, just kind of that, I walked out of
Following
the
you.
house. Yeah, I walked out of the house with no purse. We were going to lunch, no purse, no ID, no nothing, no phone. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm back in the real world. I'm leaving a house. I need these things. So felt weird to drive a car again. Seeing the sun. I don't know if I've ever appreciated the sun more. So I feel good though. I definitely feel like I'm readjusting, and I'm feeling much better than I did walking out of the house.
How much of the show, the episodes, have you seen in this less than 1 week you've been back home? And how much have you read on the internet?
I haven't read much on the internet. I've seen some of it. I haven't gone on any forums or anything like that, but I've seen comments, like I've read some of them on Instagram of the Celebrity Big Brother, and it seems like there's definitely a lot of mixed feelings. Some people loved me and some people didn't, which has always been the story of my career. So I'm not really taken back by this. I think my personality is I can be very strong and bold. I can be upfront, and sometimes people don't like that. But I'm also not perfect. I think sometimes confuse the idea that being upfront and honest means that you always have it right, and I don't always have it right. Sometimes I have it wrong, and I'm still being upfront and bold, but I'm wrong, and I have to go back and look at that and say, you know what, I presented myself this way, and that I'm sorry, I was wrong in that instance. So, and I've, you can ask my fiance. I mean, I'm very stubborn. So it takes me a moment and usually I have to remove myself from the situation in order to really reflect on it. Because if I'm still staying in the situation, I'm still in the eye of the storm, and I am not able to really accurately understand what's going on. And I don't think the Big Brother house is conducive to self-reflection, because you're constantly in a pressure cooker type environment. You feel like you're always being recorded, and you're always having to think about the game. You're always missing your family. You're sleep deprived. It's just you don't see the sun at all. So it's very different than what I was used to. And I don't know if there's any amount of preparing that I could have done that really would have made it so much different. However, I didn't have much time at all to prepare. I only had 2 weeks, where I know a lot of the other guests had months. So I must have been replacing someone on late notice. But wow, talk about a learning experience. And I'll be the first to admit I wasn't perfect. I've gotten about 7 episodes in right now. So I've just won my second HOH. That's where I'm at right now.
Are you a changed person because you spent a month in the Big Brother house? Have you changed because of the experience?
Yes. And I would actually like to use this platform to talk a little bit about mental health, because people have an expectation of me. So I'll talk about my personal feeling, but I also want to just extend that this could be the situation for anyone. Sometimes the expectations that we have for ourselves and the expectations that other people have for us, especially if we really like to go and take the world head on, are very high. And I went into this house thinking I can do it all. I didn't have a lot of notice. I had already signed for a fight. I was already planning on moving down a weight class. And then boom, I get the opportunity for Celebrity Big Brother. UFC supportive. Everybody's like, let's go and do it. I get in there and I'm in way over my head. And I'm trying my very best to balance everything that I can, but away from any support system or outlet that I would normally have, compounded by the fact that I have a lot of things outside of the house that are affecting the way that I am inside the house. And then you're in there with these strangers, you're playing this game that is obviously designed, to form these friendships, but then turn around and cannibalize your own team. I just feel like you can't really win in that circumstance. I came out the winner, but I would never enjoy, I did not enjoy the experience in that regard, that I had to turn my back on some of the people that I made these friendships with inside the house, or at least even felt that way to me. So it was difficult for me, definitely emotionally. And there were points in the house when I didn't feel like I was able to live up to my expectations. And I had to sit back and say, you know what, Misha, you're a human being. You're not a robot. You're not a machine. You are entitled to have feelings and feel frustrated or feel depressed or feel like you don't want to work out today, or that you don't, if it's going to cause you to have a breakdown because you're exhausted that day and you just don't have the mental strength, then allow yourself that, because this is an extremely unusual circumstance. You know what I mean? And so I just want people to know that I certainly wasn't just a machine. I wasn't just a perfect person in there. I wasn't hitting every workout that I was supposed to hit. I mean, I was working out in a shoebox, mind you. I'm used to working out with people every day, sparring, training, doing all these things that I wasn't able to do in the house. So it's like the elliptical, I want to burn it and never want to see another one in my life because I spent so much time on that thing. But in the short of it, we're all only human, and I think mental health needs to come first in those in circumstances of just feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I certainly did, and I certainly had moments where I caved in there. I think I have some moments for sure that I'm not even the most proud of, but I think if we were perfect people, the word sorry wouldn't exist, right? So
there's only one person who is perfect. He came.
Yes.
He is our living God, and he will be back. And we do our best to be, as you said earlier in the show, try and do what Jesus would do. Right. That's why, he came here to show us, he came here to die for our sins, because we are not perfect, and none of us will ever be even close to it. But we see what perfection is in how he lived. Are you glad you did it? Are you glad you competed in the Celebrity Big Brother house?
Well, the fact that I won it, I'm definitely glad that I did it. Yeah. If I would have come in second place, I probably would have been like, gosh, dang it. I don't know if that was worth the spending a month away from my kids. But the fact that I won it, I'm so grateful. Yes, I'm very, very grateful that I did it. I don't know if I could bring myself to say that I would do it again, nor would I recommend it to anybody.
Well, $250,000 is a lot of money. What are your plans with the check?
Well, actually, I was just speaking to a pool redesign gentleman right before we hopped on here. And, I have one of those misshaped pools. Like, I think it was probably built. I bought this home. I didn't build it myself. So I bought this home, and it was built, I think, in the late 90s. And it has just a kind of weird shaped pool, so it looks like a mud puddle shape. And I want to make it like rectangular and give my children kind of a play. What do they call that? It's like a play area where it's only a foot deep for about 8 feet of the pool.
Oh yeah, I don't know what they call it, but I know exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, I think it's like a playpen style of that part of the pool, so that they could have an area that they can play in and then have the rest of it. So I think a good chunk of that is going to go to bettering our home, making it more family friendly, and then I want to spoil my kids a little bit. I want to take them to go play and make up for lost time, which we've already been doing, but maybe a little family vacation somewhere. I'd like to get on planning one of those. And well, I don't know if you heard or whatnot, but my fiance and I are engaged. Yes.
But go on.
And we would like to set the wedding date, I think, in 2023. So I think maybe a little portion of that could be set for marrying the man I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Beautiful. We have to talk about Todrick Hall. He was your ride or die, and you were his ride or die. There's no question. How is your friendship with him right now? What conversations have you had? How is he doing?
Well, Todrick is, I think he's doing fine, actually. He's really doing well. He's preparing for his tour. He's been really busy because I think something like March 12th or whatnot is his first date of his tour in Seattle, Washington. So he's just kind of delved into that. We haven't spoken that much considering how close we were in the house. I kind of told him, look, for the first 2 days, I really barely turned my phone on because I just wanted to smush my babies and love and kiss on them and make up for lost time. And I was like, I was already without my phone for a month. What's another couple days?
Right.
But no, we've definitely stayed in contact. I want to stay in contact with him, regardless. I know a lot of people, he's not their favorite person, but I do believe that he had good intentions. And I think that it's just going to take some time to reflect. And I think right now he's got to focus on what he has coming up. And I'm not sure if he's watched the show. I haven't asked him that. But I believe at the end of the day, he meant well, whether he said it well or not, whether I said it well or not. We did mean well. I've had a little bit of a chance to reflect. And I've already, I did make an apology to Shanna, not for my gameplay, because I feel like my gameplay was fair. There are no rules in the Big Brother house, and I really did try to play it straightforward because I didn't think I would have any other way to be in that house. I didn't even know how I would begin to lie to everybody. Like my face would be a dead giveaway. But I did feel like she was on our team, and then I was surprised. And I don't think that the outside world gathered that, probably based on maybe her diaries or whatever, but not going to get too much into that. The fact that I felt like her part of her strategy was, like a flirtation or using what she wears, I should never have criticized her for how she carries herself because it's not my place. And I do want to issue a genuine apology about that because I always tell my daughter when I'm trying to explain to my daughter how to be healthy and why we don't eat a lot of junk food and things like that. I always tell her, but you never judge anyone else. It's like, Amaya, you don't worry about what they're doing. You don't judge people for what they look like. You don't judge people for anything. You let people be how they are and you judge them for their heart only. And I have prided myself as a mother, and then I found myself in some way attacking her for something that I think I could have been a lot more mindful of and sensitive to. And it just wasn't my place to say those things or to bring that out. And, she's a beautiful woman and she's allowed to carry herself however she wants to. And it should never have been a point in the game. And I've told you guys that I think that this doesn't bring out the best in us at all times to be in that situation and isn't always a very accurate depiction of who we are or how we would like to carry ourselves in the real world. So that's why I'm saying I'm sorry for that, because I don't feel like it would be something that I would do on the outside, and it's not something that I'm proud of, and I would never want my daughter to treat somebody that way or say something like that to someone else. So I am sorry for that. I'm not sorry for sending her out of the house.
Did she accept your apology?
I haven't heard anything from Shanna, but I understand, she's going through a lot herself. I can only imagine. I understand since getting out of the house that her boyfriend broke up with her on Valentine's Day. And there's been some, he obviously wasn't happy with what he felt like he was seeing. And I would like to just kind of stay out of that. But I think she has a lot on her plate as well. So, I understand if my apology is not top priority for her to respond to. I don't expect her to, but if she hears it and if it brings her a little bit of comfort to understand that, I am willing to take responsibility and say sorry for the part that I wasn't proud of, then that's enough for me.
Do you think other than Todrick, you will have a friendship with anyone from the Big Brother house?
I would like to have a friendship with everybody moving forward. I mean, we don't need to be in each other's pockets at all times, but, a follow back on Instagram, a hey, how's it going every once in a while, a liking of each other's photos, I would definitely like to have that. Todd was somebody in the house that I felt very close to. I felt like he played a really smart game as well, and a very respectable game. And I really enjoyed him. We had our moments, right, where he kind of annoyed me, and it happens in the house when you're around each other 24/7. I think he's a great person other than that. Also, by the way, I really enjoyed your interview with him. I had no
Oh,
idea that he walked such a strong path with Christ, but that was really nice to hear.
did
And
you know who Todd Bridges was before you went into the Celebrity Big Brother house? Because you are a chunk younger than me and Todd Bridges.
No, I didn't. I've heard that phrase so many times. What you talk about, Willis. I mean, I've heard it, but I had no idea what it was, and I didn't know that it was Todd Bridges, part of his acting story. So I learned all about him inside of the house, and I feel like I should have known more about him. But in truth, I don't sit down and watch TV. I never really have been. I wouldn't probably even have TVs in this house if it wasn't for my fiance. It's not a part of my life, really. So I didn't know who anyone was. Lamar might have been the closest person, and maybe Chris Kirkpatrick, when he told me he was in NSYNC. I'm like, that's why your face looks familiar. Okay, I know. But to say that I knew anything about him beyond that would be an exaggeration of the truth.
That might have also served you well in coming in as just, you are strangers to me. I'm here to compete. Let's go. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think that's just how I had to play it. I had to try to play it more straightforward, I think, than maybe most. And not knowing how to play the game maybe served me well, in that people at least took me serious when I would say something. So I did the best that I could. Nothing else I could really say.
As we wrap up this episode, since you are a woman of faith and you have, it sounds like to me, a very deep spiritual side, would you like to end this episode in prayer for us? And you can pray for your babies, your wedding, Todd, Shayna, Todrick, anyone, Ukraine, anything on your heart. Would you like to end in prayer for us?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's do it.
All right. Dear Lord God, I first and foremost would like to say thank you for all of my many blessings that I'm not even sure that I deserve, but for whatever reason, you have given me so much in this life, and I hope that I can give as much back to this world as I've been fortunate to receive through myself, and also through